It is a story of wealth, depravity, and an illusion so meticulously crafted that it fooled the world's most elite institutions. Jeffrey Epstein did not finance his dark empire with cash stuffed in mattresses. He built a fortress of corporate entities, offshore trusts, and elite bank accounts. This was not the work of a lone, exceptional criminal. It was the result of a global financial system that worked exactly as it was designed, shielding the powerful from accountability. Jeffrey Epstein grew up in a working-class family in Coney Island, but he would ultimately construct an elite, fake persona to access the highest echelons of power. By 1980, he had positioned himself as a limited partner at Bear Stearns, earning a lucrative salary before leaving in 1981 following a trading violation. From 1987 to 1989, he worked as a consultant for Towers Financial. He served as a wingman to the firm's leader, Stephen Hoffenberg, in what would eventually be exposed as one of the largest Ponzi schemes in American history, defrauding investors of $1 billion. Though Epstein left before the fraud came to light and was never charged, the experience was a masterclass in financial manipulation. In 1993, he purchased Zorro Ranch in Santa Fe County, New Mexico, establishing a massive compound equipped with an airstrip and guest houses. By 1997, the state land leases surrounding the ranch were officially signed under a corporate entity known as Cypress, Inc. But the American mainland wasn't enough to hide his growing enterprise. Epstein relocated his primary vehicle, Financial Trust Company, to the U.S. Virgin Islands. In this tax haven, he could exploit economic development incentives to slash his federal taxes to near zero, effectively financing his criminal operations with public incentive funds in the guise of investment. The illusion of the brilliant, untouchable financier was complete. A criminal enterprise of this magnitude requires infrastructure. From 1998 until his death, the world's largest banking giants served as his institutional enablers. For 15 years, JPMorgan Chase operated as Epstein's primary banker, holding up to $300 million in his accounts. Between 2004 and 2005 alone, Epstein withdrew over $1.7 million in cash from JPMorgan, triggering internal anti-money laundering alarms that identified patterns consistent with human trafficking. Yet, the accounts remained open. Concurrently, Epstein weaponized the fashion industry. In 2005, he co-founded MC2 Model Management with Jean-Luc Brunel, an agency that would become a critical node in his international operation to procure young, vulnerable women. After JPMorgan finally severed ties in 2013, Deutsche Bank willingly took Epstein on as a client. Through Deutsche Bank, millions of dollars flowed, covering settlement payments to victims, transfers to alleged co-conspirators, and expenses for young women connected to his network. Bank of America also played a crucial administrative role. Starting in 2013, accounts were opened at Bank of America in the names of Epstein's victims, nominally theirs, but practically controlled by Epstein's staff to generate documentation for immigration visas, trapping them in his web. The audacity only grew. In 2014, his corporate entity, Southern Country International, was actually granted a banking license in the U.S. Virgin Islands. A registered sex offender was now operating a licensed bank on American soil. He simultaneously laundered his reputation through elite philanthropy, using his connections to facilitate a $2 million donation from the Gates Foundation to the MIT Media Lab in 2014. The financial shields were impenetrable, matched only by his legal ones. The first crack in the facade appeared in 2006 when Epstein was arrested in Florida following an investigation by local, state, and federal law enforcement into his solicitation of minors. Armed with an 82-page prosecution memo and evidence from dozens of victims, authorities appeared ready to bring him down. Instead, his stable of high-powered attorneys negotiated a deeply controversial non-prosecution agreement, or NPA, in 2007 with U.S. Attorney Alexander Acosta. Under this sweetheart deal, Epstein pled guilty to state-level charges in 2008, served a mere 13 months in jail with extensive work release privileges, and successfully shielded all potential co-conspirators from federal prosecution. He registered as a sex offender, but the NPA effectively gave him a license to expand his trafficking operation globally. During the later trial of his accomplice, Ghislaine Maxwell, the federal court and expert witnesses like Dr. Lisa Rocchio defined this highly structured operation as a repeating playbook. This playbook involved grooming underage girls, using the cover of massage to perpetrate sexual abuse, and enforcing a terrifying system of rewards and consequences.
Conversations with women in these last few days, and from all of the support that we've received, is very clear to me that we are not going away, we are not going to be quiet, and we are not going to give up. And I ask the American public to stand with us and not give up.
As victim Annie Farmer later testified, predators use this playbook to cross boundaries and train vulnerable people to distrust their own instincts. It was a calculated, repeating loop of abuse that the justice system had actively ignored. The shield finally shattered in July 2019. A federal judge in Florida invalidated the 2008 non-prosecution agreement, and Epstein was federally indicted in New York on charges of child sex trafficking. The man who had rubbed shoulders with royalty, leveraging his connections to figures like former Prince Andrew and politicians like Peter Mandelson, both of whom would later face police questioning over their ties to him, was suddenly locked in a federal cell. But even in a prison cell, Epstein remained a financial strategist. The suspense of his final days is defined by a frantic, calculated maneuver. On August 8, 2019, exactly 48 hours before he would be found dead in federal custody, Epstein executed his final transaction. He signed a pour-over will and created the 1953 Trust, named for his birth year. It was a desperate, cynical attempt to shield his massive $577 million estate from creditors and the victims seeking restitution. He died 2 days later, ensuring the ultimate truth of his network would be buried with him. Epstein is gone, but the reckoning for the institutions that enabled him has just begun. Facing immense pressure and damning paper trails, the financial giants have been forced to pay. JPMorgan Chase agreed to a staggering $290 million settlement with Epstein's survivors. Deutsche Bank paid $75 million to victims and an additional $150 million regulatory penalty for their bureaucratic failures. In March 2026, Bank of America also reached an undisclosed civil settlement for allowing victims' accounts to be weaponized as systemic infrastructure. In total, the fines and settlements extracted from banks and Epstein's estate exceed $775 million. But money cannot buy a clean conscience. In New Mexico, where Epstein owned Zorro Ranch for over 26 years, a formal truth commission is now active. Running from April 2026 through October 2027, this non-judicial body is investigating the state's oversight gaps, gathering victim testimony, and exposing how a high-wealth enclave became a haven for human trafficking. They seek to uncover the loopholes that allowed Epstein to avoid registering as a sex offender in the state. When we look back at the empire of Jeffrey Epstein, the most terrifying realization is not the depravity of one man. It is the complicity of the machine. The wealth managers, the modeling agencies, the prestigious universities, and the blind eye of the justice system. The honey traps and the millions of dollars traded for silence. Epstein's operations scaled because modern wealth and offshore structures allowed it to. The monster is dead, but the architecture that built him remains. A haunting reminder that true justice requires dismantling the system that protected him in the first place.